I want to talk about Tim Pool, a political commentator, or let's say a social commentator. He has a podcast called Timcast IRL. One of the other podcasts that I tend to watch, and he brought up this post that was actually quite interesting, and I loved his take on it. This post was someone reacting. It's actually quite interesting. This is quite meta. This is a video of Dr. Rod and myself reacting to Tim Pool's video where he reacts to someone else, the Isabella Brown, reacting to another video, right? So it's quite meta. So just follow along. Let's talk about that last video where it was just a female comedian that was just joking about, the difference between Gen Zs and and her generation. And she was kind of joking around about the fact that they can't read cursive and they don't know how to read a map and all this sort of stuff. They'll joking about all these things and talking about, they're trying to take over the world, but all we need to do is just put our plans down in cursive writing and use a paper map, and they won't be able to, we'll be able to easily take it back over. Now, Gen Zs cop it. Gen Zs definitely really cop a negative stereotype, I suppose you could say, or a negative approach. But I actually really like Tim Pool's approach to this, because he was saying, okay, so maybe they're not prepared. But whose fault is that? Gen Z are not ready to take over the world. But that's on us, because it's our responsibility to prepare the next generation. If Gen Zs are that bad, that's on us. That's our responsibility that we haven't done enough to be able to prepare them. Dr. Rod, how do we, I love this take of Tim Pool, of taking that ownership, actually going back to our earlier topic where we were talking about Jocko Willink and his book of extreme ownership, where he talks about whatever problem there is, we need to take ownership about it. So I love this take that we have to take responsibility. If Gen Z are not prepared, that's on us. So how do we prepare the next generation?
Oh, well, first of all, we don't teach them to do things they don't need to do, like reading cursive.
Or paper
They don't
maps.
need it anymore. They don't need it anymore. In the same way that there's no point in me trying to teach my granddaughters how to change a tyre. They'll never have to change a tyre in their entire lives, I don't think. Mm-hmm. And it would probably be dangerous for them even to try, because they'll be pulling over to the side of the road and there'll be traffic whizzing past at 110 kilometres per hour or 65 or 70 miles per hour, depending on where you live. So actually, there's a lot of things they don't need to know because they don't need to know. I do think, however, where we have fallen down is the older generation. I don't think we've really passed down strong family values to our children, and I don't think we've had enough courage to correct wrong thinking. And so we've now got Generation Z and the generation after them, which I think is called Next Gen. They're growing up extremely confused about most of the matters pertaining to life. I think that's a great shame. And I do think that our generation, my generation, the generation after me, I'm a baby boomer. And then after that came Generation Y, wasn't it? Generation X. No, it was Generation X, I think. Yeah. Then you got it up there.
And then you got Generation Y, which is millennials.
And look, we just haven't been careful enough to pass on strong traditional family values. So, with the waning of religious practice, for example, people have begun to lose a sense of identity. So someone like me, I went to Sunday school as a child. I've been familiar with Christian rituals associated with various denominations. And, of course, I'm a pastor now and I've been active as a Christian for many, many years. I understand that my identity is wrapped up with my relationship with Jesus Christ. And so I have purpose because God has given me purpose. Among other things, I'm here to bring a bit of heaven to earth. And that gives me purpose. That's a good reason to wake up every morning and be enthusiastic about the day ahead. But a lot of young people today have no idea who they are. They don't have a sense of identity. And sadly, those of us in the older generations are placing ideas about self-worth and value and identity into very young children's head. They're questioning identity. So, for example, they're questioning sexual identity, and children in preschool are being confronted with this. And I think that does great damage to them.
Yes.
And we are responsible for these things. And thankfully, at least here in the United States, there's a little bit of a backlash to that. We've seen that in Target stores just in the last few weeks, actually.
Yes.
With their decision to remove some highly inappropriate children's clothing. And I believe their market value has fallen by, I think it's about $15 billion. Now, that's not going to hurt them a lot. But they should be taking the signal that, you know what, there are people out there who think enough is enough, and they're now saying it's time to stop. We're doing great harm to children and to the younger generation. And we see that manifest in very high rates of mental illness and, sadly, also in suicides.
So Dr. Rod, how do you suggest that? Why? First of all, why? I think it's important for us to understand why to be able to address a problem. Why do you think it is that, I'm going to point my finger at you, baby boomers, didn't pass it? Like it goes back to my earlier statement where we were talking about the Memorial Day and stuff. It just seems that generation to generation, it just gets watered down and diluted just a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. Why is that?
Look, it's hard to know, but my hunch is that as parents, we outsourced too much. We outsourced too much to the education system, to the medical system. We sent our kids off to organised sports and all kinds of things. And so we actually shifted most of the experience that happened within the context of the family out into the marketplace. And I've always been a very strong advocate of sending children to a Christian school, to having children with you in church every Sunday, and reinforcing Christian worldview in the home.
Yeah.
And I actually think parents in my generation thought, well, if we send our kids to a Christian school, that's, we're doing our job, and didn't try too hard in the context of the home environment. And I think that our society as a whole outsourced parenting, particularly to educators, which is wrong. And I think educators often have too much influence over our children now, particularly in the area of morality and the values. Look, I think we've got to bring it all back into the home very strongly.
Yes.
And my advice to young people is, once you've sorted out who you are, be strong and courageous in your identity, and make sure that identity is maintained strongly in the home. Don't outsource these things. Just don't outsource them.
That's good.
Don't get so busy at work that you don't spend time with your children. Look, when my daughters went through university, I used to sit with them as they wrote their assignments, and we would discuss the literature that they were reading. And we'd always discuss it in the context of Christian worldview.
Yeah.
Now, I wasn't urging my children to, as it were, take on their lecturers. I wanted them to get their degrees because I felt God had a purpose behind those degrees. But my children knew what worldview positions were taken both by their own teachers at university, and by the authors of the books and the literature that they were reading. And we reinforced Christian worldview strongly in the home as well. Both my wife and I did that. We did our best to live as Christians. We used to sit and watch television programs with our children, and if something inappropriate occurred, we'd discuss it with them. If an inappropriate advertisement was shown, we'd discuss that with them as well. So we lived with our children.
And I think I'll jump on that point. I think that's actually a really good point, because most people would, if they saw something inappropriate or heard something, they quickly just turn it off and not discuss it. But I think that, like, the point that you made is, like, we would discuss it, because that's we can't just make something taboo, because then that becomes a little bit attractive, and what's there's this allure to the unknown. Whereas I think that's quite wise, and obviously this is why I love you and have you in my life, and as my pastor and director of our company, and one of the directors on our board, because you have so much wisdom. And I just love that take. Is like, we wouldn't just, if we saw something inappropriate, we wouldn't just shut it off. We would discuss it. And would you do that even while they were at a really young age? You'd still discuss it with them?
Yes.
Yeah?
This started when they were, basically from the time that they could talk.
Yeah.
And we taught our children to tithe long before they went to school. Yeah. And I've often said to people, never, ever, ever despise, the pennies that some young child puts in the offering, because their parents might be teaching them to tithe from a very small allowance. We did that with our children. Our children are wonderfully generous adults today, at least in part because we taught them how to tithe when they were 2 or 3 years of age. And we made sure that they physically put their tithe in the offering as it went around in our church. If I can give you just one little anecdote, one of our daughters came home from school one day and had a bit of an argument, and she disagreed with me. She said, "Why can't I do that? It's my life. I can do what I like with it." She was about 5 years old, and obviously she'd heard this at school. And I sat her down and I explained to her, well, actually, you know what? It's not your life. It's God's life. You can't do what you like with your life. What you do has to be pleasing to God. And she was about 5 years of age at that point. She may have been a little older. And you know what? She's never uttered those words again. And now she's nearing 40 years of age.
Wow.
Never uttered those words again. And then, look, powerful. I didn't spank her. It'd be illegal these days anyway, but I didn't spank her. I didn't rouse on her. I didn't raise my voice. I sat her down and I said, no, we don't say things like that in this family. And the reason is, and I explained the reason to her. And, I think there are a lot of adults who need to learn that lesson as well. It's not your life. You can't do with it what you want. You can do what you want with it if you want, but it's not your life. Yeah. You were bought with a price. You were bought with a price. It's God's life, and God wants to pour blessing into the life that He has for you. But listen, we've got. Don't contract that out to the education system or to organise sports or anything like that. You take responsibility for that as a parent, and I think that's where we fell down badly as baby boomers. And I think we're probably the first generation ever that, for whatever reason, decided we wanted to be friends with our children. A parent is not the friend of a child. In fact, I think it's an insult. Yeah. Our relationship as parents goes way, way beyond friendship. Yeah, it's the same in a marriage relationship. I always arc up when I see people write on their social media, my wife or my husband, they're my best friend.
Best friend.
What a blooming insult. What an insult. My wife is way, way more important than my best friend. Well, I've said to some people, hey, I'll die for my wife, but I'm not too sure I'll die for you. That's the difference between a best friend and a wife, Yeah,
that's good. That's good.
Anyway, I think we got a few things wrong, and we're paying for it now. That's for sure.
So, Dr. Rod, I'm glad we've got you as a representation of baby boomer on this podcast, because we can just point everything to you. We blame you, Dr. Rod.
I'll take it.
No, look, we need to take that responsibility ourselves. Yeah. If you don't like the next generation coming up, That's on you. That's your responsibility. Like, what are you doing to raise up the next generation? What are you doing have you just outsourced, as Dr. Rod said, have you just outsourced the growth, the teaching, the learning, the development of the next generation? Or are you intrinsically involved, communicating, talking through, discussing, openly including them in every journey? And like, obviously we're talking about kids, but let's talk about the next generation. Maybe you're leading a church or leading a business or whatever. Make sure you're nurturing those people, that next generation. Don't just outsource that to so-and-so will look after that or whatever. Like, no, make sure you're intrinsically involved in everything that is bringing up the next generation so that we can make sure we're imparting the right values. Opening up communications. I know that I've had great leaders that have just pulled me under their wing, and just the fact that they've included me in certain meetings just helped me grow and develop as a leader, and I'm a much better leader now because of those opportunities, just because they included me in conversations. That's all it is. If you don't like the way the next generation is, that's on you. Take some under your wing and help mentor them, help them develop and pass on those values that we spoke about. And if you are that next generation, then and the previous generation isn't doing that for you, don't despise them for it. Don't try to cut them down or stuff them out or whatever. Like, don't try to dethrone them. How about you go up and say, hey, I'd love to learn from you. What can I do to learn from you? What can I do? Partner, some of the best things I've done is I've just found a great leader and I've just gone and served them. What can I do for you? And it's those people that gave me the opportunities to be in those rooms, to lead organizations, to be in charge of projects, to gain experiences, because I went up to someone and I just said, what can I learn from you? How can I learn from you? What can I do to be in your world that I can learn from you? So next generation, if you don't feel like you're getting the mentorship, if you don't feel like you're getting the person supporting and encouraging you, that's not passing on enough knowledge or experience, go and seek them out. Now, I know we society have just rushed together and just gone, well, now you've got to go and get a coach. No, you don't need a coach. You need a mentor. You need to find someone that you can serve that has the same vision of you to be able to learn and develop from them. Go and serve them and help them with what they're pursuing so that you can learn from them as well. And a little bit of a shameless plug once again, link down in the description. Our mobile app leadership development program completely free, has been developed with you in mind, with you specifically in mind, the next generation. We've made it so that you can actually learn, because no one's teaching you this stuff. We've created this free so you can learn it. You don't need a coach. You just need to go and learn. And hey, we've got the resources there for you also. So if you don't like the next generation, it's your fault. I kind of liked that. Hey, you've just watched an excerpt from the On the Cube Leadership podcast. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If it challenged your leadership or inspired you in some way, put a comment below. And if you want to watch the full episode or more content like this, check out our channel. And hey, consider subscribing while you're there.